Hello everyone, how are you? Sean Ferrick here for Trek Culture, but I'm not alone, because in the background, I've managed to kidnap the wonderful Chris Thompson.
Hi.
He knows what he did. We are here attending MCM Comic Con this weekend, and we are fresh out of the Strange New Worlds panel. It was a little bit cool. We had 4 stars from the show beamed in holographically. Now, I actually mean beamed sort of literally in this case, because the hologram of Celia Rose Gooding and Melissa Navia and Rebecca Romaine and Ethan Peck were all streamed live from 2 different time zones, which was a little bit cool, onto a holographic panel. So it was kind of fun, actually. It was a bit cool. And, you know, we kind of elbowed our way up to the front row, so that was fun too. We had Celia Rose Gooding and Melissa Navia in New York, and Rebecca Romaine and Ethan Peck were in LA. But of course, the way it was presented, as I'm sure you can see in the wonderful picture that's beside me right now, is that it looked like they were all sitting in the room. The panel was hosted by Alex Zane, who I last remember going wild on some sort of MTV party. Lots of the questions were, of course, about the upcoming Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Now, make sure you stick around, because we have a little breakdown of a scene that was showed from Episode 1 of Season 2, which I'll go into now in a second. Melissa Navia kicked things off by speaking about the absolute fun that she was having, particularly with Season 2, but also overall. She was very clear to say that while, yes, we're finally getting our Ortegas episode that's coming up in Season 2, the plan for her character has been there since the beginning. I kind of got the feeling that maybe she's getting questions about, you know, when are we going to get the Ortega story? And what she's gotten used to saying back is that the story's always been there. Now we're only going to get a development of it in Season 2, but as she said herself, it's going to kind of retroactively explain a lot of her actions in Season 1, which I thought was very interesting, because we haven't got as much of her as I would like, so that was good to hear. Celia Rose Gooding, of course, talked about the pressure that comes from taking on such an iconic legacy character as Uhura. They spoke about how they felt supported by the writers and the whole team, and of course the Star Trek family. Later on, they addressed a question about this pressure of legacy overall. We'll come to that in a moment. Directly, they addressed the relationship that had built up between Uhura and Hemmer in Season 1. Unfortunately, as we all know, Hemmer didn't make it past All Those Who Wander. Even though Bruce Horrock does say he'll be back in some form or another, we don't know how. Celia said it was very important to the writing team that a relationship with this cadet Uhura be built up and then removed, because it would give this idea of Uhura having found some sort of stability, then to have that taken away going into Season 2. So that was a very interesting point that was dropped there. Rebecca Romaine had us all laughing when asked about the Elysian Kingdom, and, you know, would we see something like that coming up in Season 2? She effectively said, we just kind of had the crack when it came to genres in Season 2. And actually, sort of jumping ahead for a second, we've seen in some of the artworks for Season 2 coming up, we mentioned in the last video that we thought maybe there might be a noir episode. They didn't out and out say that in this in this panel, but what they did do is they sort of flew through different artwork styles, which we assume are for the different episodes, much like they did for Season 1, and one of those was entirely in black and white, which gives a little bit of credence to Chris's theory that we're going to have a noir black and white episode of Season 2. I am so here for that, if that is going to happen. Because you need to take chances. You need to do something different if a show's going to survive. When are we going to get a Star Trek musical? And no, that scene in the elevator between Number 1 and Spock doesn't count, although it's good fun. Let's get a full musical episode. Buffy had one, why can't Star Trek have one? Ethan Peck spoke to how the pressures come off him a little bit in his portrayal of Spock, as the writers are working with him to his version of Spock, which, as we've seen, is a more emotional one, like we saw in the original pilot The Cage, that hadn't really developed into that cold style of, you know, Vulcan logic that we've seen with Leonard Nimoy, and of course later on then with Zachary Quinto as well. It was fun to see him, you know, kind of laugh about that a little bit, because there has been a lot more comedy with Spock than we were expecting. When asked about working with T'Pring, for example, and Gia Sandhu, although there wasn't really much new in his answer, you could see that there was a genuine affection for that relationship coming from Peck. And that was fun, because I will say, and I say this with love, Ethan Peck probably had the least to say of anyone on the panel. It seemed as though perhaps someone just off screen, before himself and Rebecca started speaking, said, "Don't talk about the following." It was a bit funny, so not much reveals coming from LA, I will say that. There was a bit of an eyebrow raise, because clearly there has been a press briefing that has been given out, because we spoke in our piece breaking down the recent SFX article, which featured an interview with Akiva Goldsman, where they talked about, well, we know number one's going to be fine in regards to she's been arrested, she's an Illyrian, and there's court-martial, because she's there in the cage. Now, we just put that down to a gaffe, maybe by Akiva Goldsman. Maybe he's thinking of the menagerie. Even then, that doesn't really work because it's a flashback. But on stage today, Rebecca Romaine basically said the same thing, almost word for word. So that definitely raises a bit of an eyebrow, because the cage, as we know, happened in 2254. This season is set minimum 2259. So it definitely happened before. And what's more, the Season 2 episode of Star Trek Discovery, if memory serves, for which Akiva Goldsman served as consulting producer, opens with previously on Star Trek. We then get a montage of scenes from the cage, which cuts into a scene of Anson Mount, which I love. We get the return of Vina. We get them going back to Talos 4. And this is our Strange New Worlds characters. So I think someone wrote a press briefing that might have had a little slip up in it, and unfortunately that's now gone out into the world. So there was just a moment of when that came up. What it does leave us with is the question of, is that a press briefing mix-up, or is that a writing mix-up? Are we then going to suddenly get the cage later on, either in Season 2 or Season 3? We know, based on the trailer and based on previous reports, that they will visit Rigel 7 this season. Now, I said in our last trailer breakdown that it's going to be like Payback, that they will go back to Rigel 7. If this is their first time at Rigel 7, well, you'll have to wait and see what I say about that in the ups and downs. Before the floor was opened up to questions from the audience, Alex asked each one of the participants what was their favourite parts of Season 2. And actually, what I will say is that Ethan Peck gave the most direct answer here. He said it was getting to work with Carol Kane. Now, we've only seen a tiny little clip of her so far, and already I think she's going to be so much fun. Carol Kane is brilliant. And he told us specifically to watch out for Episode 5. That tells us nothing. That tells us possibly everything. Sally Rose Gooding, actually, they said something very interesting, that this time with the airing of Season 2, there is, obviously for various reasons in the world, they are not currently in production, which means they get to sit down and enjoy the airing of the episodes with their family. They said that they were from a family of Trekkies, so that was actually really nice to hear. Then, poor Alex saying he let some foolish person up to ask a question.
Hi, how are you? Okay, I'll try and figure this out. How are you? Sean Ferry for Trek Culture. First of all, on behalf of probably everyone, thanks so much for Season 1. Like, it was just so much fun, and in such a short amount of time, you absolutely solidified your legacy in Star Trek. So thank you so much, each and every one of you. And legacy is something I want to pick up on here, because I think over the last few weeks, months, and even years, legacy has been on everyone's mind. This season, you've got Jonathan Frakes behind the camera, you've got the crew from Lower Decks showing up as well, and you have, of course, you've maintained your own position in that legacy. How does that feel for you, both Celia coming from a family of Trekkies and for yourselves as well? What kind of pressure and nice pressure does that feel like for you?
Especially with Uhura and the legacy that that character has and the legacy that I've been gifted the pleasure to inherit. It's that sort of pressure that makes diamonds. You know, sometimes pressure is just pressure for pressure's sake, and I find that this want and energy to want to do it well and want to pay homage to this decades-long franchise that we've sort of inherited, the pressure to do it well is very real, but then that pressure immediately goes away when we get to see what our wonderful fans are saying and the fact that they are so supportive of whatever we decide to throw at them. I think that is the nice part of the pressure when we know that we have a very like cushiony safe haven to sort of fall into. But yeah, that legacy pressure is real, but it's not unwanted. It for me personally, that's where I thrive. So it's very good to have.
Yeah, and I'll just say, because you mentioned Jonathan Frakes, being on the bridge with Jonathan Frakes and hearing, you know, that voice that we all know, and then him telling me to do things at the helm, you know, it's just but it was definitely there, like, you know, and you know, he's just wonderful to work with, and you know, it was just an example to us, one of the many examples that this is a really big, beautiful family, and a generations-long experiment that has been going very well. But working with him, like for me, I remember, you know, before I think even episode 1 came out, you know, there were whispers from people, you know, saying Ortega seems like the Riker of the crew. And then I remember telling Frakes that, he was just like, yeah, totally. And I was just like, good, that's you know, that's all I need. So, but that's a very cool thing, is just like we're all really rooting for each other, and yeah, it's Star Trek is there's nothing like it. But I don't need to tell you that, you know that.
And I just want to add on to what Celia was saying about the pressure from the fans and the pressure to get these legacy characters right, and to get our series right, and pressure becoming a diamond in this case. It's because the fans are so supportive and so uplifting. And I've been a part of other franchises where I've felt that similar pressure to get these characters right. And it's never felt as uplifting and supportive as the Trekkie fans have felt.
Yeah, and I don't even know how to answer that question right now. I feel just so in the middle of it, and it's hard to see the big picture effect in my life and perhaps in yours there. But it's, yeah, ask me in like 10 years.
When we're still shooting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, Sean.
Thank you.
I don't know who that was. Snappy dresser, though. We had a couple more questions, but again, not much in the terms of revelations when it comes to season 2. Obviously, there's not much they can say. You know, they probably have the production team standing there going, don't you dare. But there was one funny question where they were asked, what was your favourite alien species to work with? Celia Rose Gooding said, Enar. I'm like, nice. Well, the other 3 said Vulcan, which I thought, alright, Ethan Peck, I like it. Now, would you like a little breakdown of the scene that we were shown? I will say, we were laughing, myself and Chris, that we finished this, we were ready there, we had our breakdown, we're like, how are we going to discuss this, because we can't give spoilers and we can't break it. Oh, they've released it online. Great, okay, here's our exact breakdown then, bit by bit. You can see it on Star Trek on Paramount Plus and Star Trek on P+, both of which the clips are on Twitter. They shouldn't be, I've seen people sharing non-geolocked versions. By the time this airs, it's probably on YouTube and probably on everyone's phone. But what it is, it's clearly from episode 1 of season 2, and it focuses on Una's court-martial. Now, the first thing, just take my money. The dress uniforms are absolutely gorgeous. It's a lovely update on the original series dress uniforms, while also still being very much in line, of course, with what we've got used to. They are absolutely nailing the look of this period. So that's just number 1. You know me in dress uniforms anyway. We see the prosecutor is Captain Batel, which actually, that was a surprise to me. We knew that Batel had come to arrest her, Una, at the end of season 1. Didn't realize she'd be serving as prosecutor, so that's interesting. We see the crew of the Enterprise are giving testimony. Spock talks about the first time he met Una was when it was his first day on the Enterprise as an ensign, which we saw in the Short Trek Q&A. La'an, She says, first time she met Una, of course, was when Una was part of the team that rescued her after her colony ship was attacked by the Gorn. Now, this is interesting. Batel says, Laan Noonien Singh, that's a very distinctive surname. Are you any relation of Khan? To which Laan looks her in the eye and says, yes. Okay, right, so we knew the relationship was going to be there. This has been teased in the past. What we didn't know is how it was going to be addressed. So, Season 2, Episode 1, right, Khan Noonien Singh is infamous enough that Batel is able to go, oh, you share the same name, which means Spock is watching this. So this is... This, to us, obviously, this is where we're going to start. Kiva Goldsman has said they're going to muck around with canon a little bit. So, right, okay, let's see how they do this. And let's see how they commit to this. Because there's one thing if it's, something like a gaffe or then we're like, okay, well, But if it's something they're going to commit to and go, right, we've established that Khan Noonien Singh is an infamous name in 2259, 2260. He is going to come back from cryo sleep 2266, 2267, and at this point, at least Spock is going to know about him. A hell of a thing to drop in the teaser clip for this episode. Because now we're like, is there going to be a mind wipe or something at the end of this episode? More questions than answers. Which I guess is a good way to give us a teaser. The last thing I just have to say is that who else was so, just stoked just to see those the old brick tapes back again? No, sorry, that was just good fun. And that's kind of it. Thank you so much to MCM Comic Con for inviting us as part of the press team. This was cool. So cool. We got to see holograms. We got to see beaming on stage. I got to ask a question. That was good fun. And Kris didn't stop me. That was good fun too. It's exciting. If you're around this weekend, come say hi. We're going to be around all day tomorrow as well. We want to see you in cosplay. We just want to talk to you about Star Trek, about everything. It's all good. It's all great. Everyone, until I'm talking to you again, which is going to be soon, because we're getting close to now the ups and downs, June the 15th, look after yourselves. Make sure that you live long and prosper. Follow us on Twitter at Trek Culture. Follow us on Instagram at Trek Culture YT. You can get myself at Seán Ferrick on all the various socials. You can get Kris at Chris Edit on all the various socials as well. Until I see you again, be kind to yourself, be kind to your nearest and dearest. And you know what? Watch a bit of Star Trek. Thanks very much.